Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Index Office Hours. Today is the 16th of July, and this is Index Office Hours 166. For anyone who's new to Index Office Hours, so let's see. Oh, we have familiar faces. I actually a few folks who I recognize from the ecosystem, but are new to the call. So for those who are new to the call, this is Index Office Hours. This is the town square where graph ecosystem participants come together and discuss the most important and relevant topics for indexes. This is a conversation and we love participation, so please do get involved in today's conversation via voice or text. And if you're having any issues with the voice aspect, do let me know and I will try and get that sorted for you. This is going to be recorded and posted onto public channels like YouTube. So if you are concerned about privacy, please bear that in mind. With that, let's get into today's agenda. So as always, I give a shout out to the latest GRT IQ episode. Today's no different. And this is GRT IQ episode 117 with Elliot Tessanier. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And he's the co-founder and CTO of Noodle. And Noodle is a Web3 network that uses smartphones as nodes to establish a digital trust network, which I think is pretty interesting. And if you're interested in how Web3 could potentially solve authentication for real-world events, this is a pretty interesting episode because he talks a little bit about that. And also talks a bit about how he's, of course, leveraging the graph as well. So do check out the episode, which I believe Juan has posted in the chat. And with, yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. And the agenda as well, which has the POAP code there. So just between now and when the window will be open, feel free to check that out. Last week we realized what the issue was with the POAPs. They were having issues on the technical side with their product. It should be fixed today, so go check out the code during the window. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Anna for our regularly scheduled Repo Watch section.
Thank you, Abel. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Today's on Repo Watch, starting with our usual execution layer client. We have had new releases for Get. This is version 1.14.7. This is a hotfix release for a bug that was introduced in the previous release, and users of the previous release should upgrade as soon as possible. Next, we have a new release for Firehose Ethereum, so version 2.6.4. This introduces support for Substream's version 1.9.0, which fixes a critical bug that could corrupt store state files. And this version also introduces a new intrinsic to skip empty outputs and improves schedule order for faster initial block processing. On next release is Arbitrum Nitro. This is version 3.1.0. This includes a critical update to ARB-OS 31. This release is required for all users of Arbitrum Sepolia to run by July 22nd, 2024, which I believe is next Monday. And it also contains additional improvements to the antitrust DAS system, significant configuration changes, and enhances system metrics, as well as including support for auto detection of database engines and new tracing opcodes. We have tested this release on Arbitrum Sepolia and it works without issues. Then we have no new releases on consensus layer clients. And finally, on the graph stack, we have had a new release on indexer service and agent. This is a pre-release, so version 0.21.4. So this introduces a new command for receipt collection on indexer CLI. It also adds improvements for deployment management and logging. It supports closing allocations on unsupported network, which was not possible before, and updates default subgraph settings, while also fixing other several issues, including updating documentation and enhancing CI. This is all I have for you this week. I'm just gonna check. I missed the latest Firehose Ethereum 9 minutes ago. So this is version 2.6.5. Thank you, Matthew, which fixes a bug in the block fetcher, which can cause transactions received to be nil, and fixes a bug in the substream where chains with non-zero first streamable block would cause substreams to hang. Okay, I'll make sure to update the agenda with this latest release as well. Thank you. Over to you, Juan.
Thanks, Anna.
Just very quickly, I can see in the chat here that Matthew said he can add some context for the recent Firehose releases, and I believe he unmuted. So if you want to go ahead very quickly, Matthew, feel free to.
Yeah, sure. So just for those who've got the substreams cache files, those need to be, if you have an older version that created those cache files, they may not have the correct information, so they need to be deleted and then regenerated. Deleting files and letting it regenerate is not a big deal. However, if you have substreams running live and you don't want those to block because you're syncing a substream based subgraph, then you need to do a bit of work to regenerate the cache files, without impacting the substream, then let the substream, then switch, then, rewind your subgraph potentially. So there's a bit of stuff here. So I'm happy to, chit chat. Maybe we can do Q&A later if people have questions. But it's not just upgrade to the latest Firehose. There's a bunch of stuff you need to do here. And as well with the latest Firehose Ethereum on 2.6.5, it fixes a bug in the RPC polar. So there's some Firehose blocks that may not be have all the correct information. So you want to regenerate your Firehose blocks. So you may want to regenerate your Firehose blocks, then regenerate your substreams cache, and then rewind your subgraph. So a few things here. Yes, and it's only Firehose blocks generate the RPC polar. If it's a native integration, then you're not impacted by the fixes from today. But anyway, happy to answer questions, have a discussion on it.
Amazing. Just quickly, we should definitely carve out some time in the open discussion to circle back on this, but I believe Derek's got a quick question there. If you want to address before we go to
pausing them first prevented divergence. No, because you're probably already running a version that has the problem. I mean, if you're not running a version that has a problem, then yeah. Then skip over any versions that have problems and you wouldn't need to pause your subgraph at all. The only Firehose blocks that are impacted are the ones that are using the RPC polar. The substreams cache files are any chain. Two different problems with two different fixes. It is mentioned in the release notes for Firehose, so you can always check.
Amazing. Really do appreciate you sharing the alpha there. Let's folks keep the questions coming. And what we'll do is once we've done Protocol Watch with Juan, then we'll loop back to this.
Yep, no worries. Also, it's going to be a short one, so we can get back to the juicy stuff pretty quickly. So for Protocol Watch, we have on forum governance for the chain integrations, we have add support for rootstock, which is a Bitcoin sidechain. Again, it's EVM compatible, so it shouldn't have any integration issues or anything. But if you're interested, again, the link is in the agenda for this particular thread. Then we have JP67, which is deprecate the L1 mainnet protocol. There was a question from Jim, mainly regarding how this deprecation impacts the index agent, particularly if you're running in multi-network mode. There were some answers from Pablo, but I think it's not entirely clear if it's going to cause some weird edge cases or anything, at least from our perspective. I don't know if the index agent team has been able to take a look at this. That's pretty much an open discussion in the forums. Again, if you're interested in that, the link is in the agenda. Next up, for forum research, we have a particular question about the Uniswap v3 Uniswap v3 query that's broken. From what I could look at it, it's basically about indexer response. So the gateway not finding any indexers that are suitable for that query, as far as I'm aware. So it's probably just either a transient error due to some technical difficulties with indexers, or maybe some rebalancing of allocations causing these issues. But as far as I can tell, it's gateway related, not subgraph related. For contracts repository and network subgraphs, we don't have any new updates. Again, for the contracts team, they're mainly working on the Horizon story, so hopefully we have some updates very soon on that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for Protocol Watch. So I'm going to hand over to, well, I would assume I don't see Paca here, so Abel, and we can start with the open discussion again.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Let's loop it back to the fire hose conversation. So Matthew, if you want to add any additional context, or if folks have any questions, feel free to fire away.
Don't have any additional context, just happy to help with questions. Well, I guess the one additional context is, hold on, let me get the actual name of the flag here. Substreams allows you to keep multiple versions of cache files. There's an extra parameter you can set in the substreams configuration and tell it where to write the cache. So this is helpful for running substreams, letting your existing substreams run live while regenerating cache files behind the scenes. So it depends on your specific setup, kind of how you need to do things. And as I said, I'm happy to chat one-on-one with anybody if they need specific guidance for their setup. Let me just get the name of the config here. SF. Okay, so I'll paste it in the chat. The config is substream state store default tag. So by default, this is empty. But once you set this, then it will put this on the beginning of the storage location. So substreams are cached by the module hash. So based on the module hash, it will now get whatever the tag is / the module hash. So if you set it to like v1, so your file name will be v1 / module hash. Whereas before it would have just been module hash. So this way now you can run substreams and generate it. Now there is a magical command line argument to substreams to tell it to override the module hash. I forget what it is. Maybe Colin, I see Colin is there. Maybe he can tell us what it is. Or what I do is I just set up 2 different substreams tier 1 nodes. One is the old one and one's the new one with the new module hash. Reprocess the substreams, and then away it goes. Otherwise, you need to pass an extra parameter to substreams to tell it to use the different tag, which I can I can ask Stefan after this. We can get the info. So a couple of different ways to do it. And then if you want to have all the SPKG files for the substreams that have run, those are actually all in the cache. So you can look at the old cache files and your SPKG file is there. So you can rerun it again. And the you just need to pass an extra magical command line argument. Let me just copy it here. It's called skip package validation. So when you run substreams, run, let me paste here. That will then allow you to use the SPKG file that's contained within the cache. If you don't pass that, then it complains that it's not a valid SPKG. So little magical flag you need there. The other thing is, depending on when you upgraded the version of substreams that has a problem, the cache files that are dated before you did the upgrade are fine. So you don't actually have to reprocess the entire history. You can keep the original cache files and then apply, just recalculate the other one. So you may want to copy the cache files from your original location to the new location up to the point where you did the upgrade. Now, you will need to know when you did the upgrade, which hopefully you have recorded somewhere in your change management system. If not, anything after June 1st is suspect. Before June 1st is fine. The details are in the release notes about the problem. So we've been working on this for the last couple of days. So yeah, and if you haven't upgraded for a while, then maybe you don't have a substreams that has a problem. You might be okay. So anyway, check your unique situation to see where you are. But if you are using the RPC polar, okay, Colin put some details there with the problem with the blocks, with the fire hose blocks. If you use the RPC polar to generate the fire hose blocks, this would be on a chain like, say, Avalanche, which doesn't have a native fire hose instrumented binary. And there is a tool that you can run against your blocks to tell you if you have the problem. So there's a debug tool, so you know which ones you need to regenerate. Fire, ETH tools, get it? Or Colin can type it faster than me. Super quick tools are good for debug here. That's all. All right. So Colin, give us an update. All right. Cool. Any questions that you want to address now? As I said, happy to provide help through this. Feel free to DM me.
Yes, any questions people have, feel free to fire away. In fact, if anyone has any kind of things they want to go through that potentially, yeah, thanks for bringing this in and sharing this info, Matthew. Really do appreciate that. Yeah, if folks have any specific questions, would be very interesting to kind of discuss that here and make sure that it's addressed. So yeah, we'll make sure I'll pause now for that.
I think we can move on. If people have questions, I'm sure they'll let me know.
Got it. Got it. Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, as I said, thanks very much for that. Really do appreciate that, sharing that, Matthew. And yeah, if folks have any questions, you know where to go. All right. Now we move on into the open discussion. And what I thought would be interesting to do today is continue from last week's conversation. There was a lot of conversation last week, and we were overflowing, if you remember. So I thought it'd be a good idea to loop it back and make sure that all questions, thoughts, things like this are addressed before we move on. So the first thing that makes sense to focus on is, and actually, I don't think we even got around to this uh, last week, but we did kind of. I did ask the question, but we moved on, which is a general question about the recent transition, how it's affected people's operations, and any alpha that people can share. Um, uh, I did like some of the stuff that people wrote here, like investing in monitoring and dashboards, as Marc-Andre alluded to. So maybe we can start there, and perhaps maybe share more alpha, and then get into the rest of the stuff. So, Marc-Andre, if you want to add any context on any specific aspects of monitoring and dashboards that you feel like could bring a lot of value to other indexes, feel free to do so. I think it'd be really really helpful.
Well, I don't have anything specific there. I think it's just a good practice of monitoring everything. Of course, the hardware, but also every services you have out there. Monitoring subgraphs is relatively easy, but monitoring nodes that might require some more scripting, things like substreams, firehose, you need to keep close attention. Yeah, make sure you have good dashboards and good automation in place to monitor everything. I'm still not where I should be, but I think it's worth investing the effort for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And then Matthew asked the question is anyone interested in having a specific tools dashboards, tools/dashboard that monitors the state of all chains using substreams? We're thinking about creating one. Curious to hear if anyone has any particular perspectives on that. That could be quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, one of the challenges we have is the, when substreams stopped or Firehose stops generating blocks, it's like, why? The usual answer is some upstream chain issue. So trying to, have more insight into what's going on with all the chains is something we need to spend time on. Something tool that has a link to all the different block explorers, the different status, endpoints where, chains might post their status page, the link to the Discord channel. I don't know what else that people might want, but just as a troubleshoot. So when the chain stops producing blocks, what? Yeah, so that's what we're kind of thinking about.
Amazing. And as you can see, there's quite a few people who have put some emoji reactions on there, so it seems like there's quite a bit of an appetite for that. What would be the process here? Like, would you look to launch this tool if there's sufficient demand? Would you look to launch this tool in the coming weeks, or like what's the timeline? Months? Like, how would you go about and doing this and sharing this with the community?
It's currently an idea, so there's no more details than that. So if people are like, yeah, that would be really cool, then, if they're interested in having some, specific features that they think would be cool to have on it, or, people think it's not a good idea because they have their own stuff already, or anyway. If they want to collaborate on building such a thing, sure. It's just an idea. Since we were talking about dashboards, I thought I'd throw it out there. It's something I talked to the GraphOps team a little bit about when we were working on Launchpad a couple months ago, but it's still just at the idea stage.
Amazing. Yeah, anyone have any particular thoughts on that? I think this is a great place to get feedback for the core developers to get feedback from the community. So yeah, feel free to fire away. I see a few people typing.
Yes, I'm too lazy to type. I'll just unmute. So, question for you, Matthew. Since we have a status page, which sort of shows the health, I guess any outages on chains, what's your thought of like integrating that with this potential dashboard, or do you view them as two separate things entirely?
Could be integrated, absolutely. I think all those status page things have, APIs. Or, maybe this whole thing just links into a status page. I really don't know at this point. I haven't thought that far. It's at the idea stage.
Cool. Are you thinking of using Grafana for your dashboard?
Could. Not necessary, depending. We might be able to do. I mean, Grafana is great because it has a lot of stuff that capabilities are out of the box. So if we can do it all in Grafana, then that's probably a good thing. Or otherwise, build a React web app or something. But maybe we start with something simple, let's get feedback, see where we go from there. I mean, it's a common problem that, our ops team runs into all the time. We have like, I don't know, 50 blockchains, and, there's always one of them that has an issue. Yesterday was Moonbeam. So, who knows?
You're getting some comments coming through. Vince wants a Discord and Telegram bot webhook. Interesting.
I think there's some work going on. Payne is working on this to integrate the Discords into the Graph Discord from the various chains. So that will be super helpful. Or maybe Mickey, you know what's going on with that? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, in progress.
Because
I guess for everyone's awareness, for people who don't know what we're referring to, if another chain has, let's say, their own Discord server and they're posting updates, we've enabled our Discord server to reflect those messages in a channel on our server. So you don't have to go checking a million different Discord servers. You'll be able to get those updates here in the Graphs Discord.
That would be super amazing. Because, I'm subscribed to a whole bunch of Discords. The problem is finding the right channel in the navigation bar. There's 100 of them there.
Yeah, it's intense.
Yeah, echoing my the sentiment here. That would be super useful. So great to hear that it's in motion. Seems like Derek's posted something here about a separate topic, saying someone DM'd him today about individual subgraph backup. Do you want to add a bit of context there, Derek?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have regular backups being taken, but that's going to be of your entire database. And sometimes you might have a single subgraph that fails or something happens and whatever, and you want to restore just one subgraph from your entire backup. It'd be nice to have a easy integration with that, because I remember we had that happen one time where we deleted, I think we deleted a subgraph and we're like, oh shit, we needed that one. And so then we had to restore the whole database over on a newly created shard, and then copy the intended subgraph over to one of our active shards, and then later deprecate that new shard that we created. And it seems like that whole process could be automated and simplified in case you do have subgraphs that get deleted, or they get corrupted for some reason, or you remove a subgraph and then later it's like, oh, I need this one for a graph base somewhere, whatever, right? But having a simple graphman command where you can restore a singular schema, I feel like that would be helpful. I don't know if work on this has been done since I last tried it. I haven't tried to do it, or I haven't had to do it anytime recently. So maybe that's already done, or I don't know. So I was bringing it up here.
Amazing. This is the best place to bring it up, so I appreciate you doing so. Anyone close to the situation able to comment on that? It'd be interesting if anyone has any thoughts there. Or anyone run into a similar issue as well? Just a quick question to confirm, Derek, is that based on last week's conversation?
I think 2 weeks ago, I know Payne was talking about just removing it entirely, or pruning it entirely, and I was like, well, I don't know that we want to prune it entirely, but it does seem like having some type of a time to live inside that call cache would make sense, and that way you're storing things for a couple of days, but after a couple of days you probably won't need to re-refer to it.
Right. I'm not sure. I don't think we did follow up on that. I haven't spoken to Payne in a while, and he hasn't joined in a while, so I'm assuming yeah, I'm not sure on the latest on that, but I will message him in relation to that. So, oh, I muted myself. I will make a note of that and yeah, hopefully get a response on that pretty soon. Cool. Cool. Yeah, I will note that down. Amazing. I'm also very curious to hear more about Josh's advice here from Fast. Automation is always important, so maybe Josh, if you want to add a bit of context here and share a bit of alpha with the group, that would be awesome.
I don't have too much specifics to add, just more we've been tooling up more on like I do things fairly manually in a spreadsheet. I've been looking at Vincent's tools, and it seems to do similar to what I do, but I just prefer the spreadsheet look over a website UI. And Colin's built some stuff for us to, so like I, as a non-technical guy, I could actually post my allocations and reallocations within Slack and have it run from there, and then we get progress updates that way. So just trying to pass more of the technical work off of the engineers to the non-technical team. If anyone here has more people on their team that could bear some of that burden.
Awesome. What are some of the things that you have on the spreadsheet, and how does it differ from Vincent's tool? Just curious if you're open to sharing.
Fairly similar information to what you find on Vincent's tool. I just prefer working in a spreadsheet. Like just having all the rows a lot closer together is a little bit easier, I find, just to look at and go through. And also the website sometimes take a while to load. Um, One thing he has that's great compared to what I have is the quick check on the status, what's closable, what's not closable at a moment. Whereas I have to track that more manually. But yeah, similar information, just a different view on that information.
Got it. Makes sense. Appreciate you sharing. And yeah, definitely a good idea. If you're more comfortable with spreadsheets. Derek asked the question, did you get a chance to play with the agent connect to execute transactions directly? Is that a
I
question to
did not.
specific? Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, I didn't go down to that point. Wasn't necessary for me, and it's from what I can tell from what I've spoken with other guys on, it's fairly similar-ish to what we're doing in terms of just batching it out, executing all the reallocations.
Cool. Looks like we got a thumbs up there. Appreciate it. Awesome. Great. Well, yeah, thanks, Josh, and thanks, Derek, for chiming in on that one there. Okay, let's see. Did we speak about this, Derek, last week? I'm trying to remember. You asked the question of what others are doing for cleaning up old deployments and graph bases. Not sure if we touched base on that. Um, don't think we did. Okay. Awesome. Do you want to share a bit of context there, and then we can maybe tap into that one there? I just want to make sure that all the stuff from last week is covered off.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I've been spending a little bit of work on in the past week. So I started tackling a few things on it, but especially with 6,000 subgraphs now on the decentralized network. The We used to use, or at least I used to use, the curation station Telegram channel to get notified when versions get updated and new subgraphs get deployed. And at this point, it's just unreadable because it just gets flooded with stuff, right? So I've no longer kept track, and I don't think I can mentally keep track with our near 300 allocations that are currently open to know what's open and not open and all that type of stuff. So just trying to figure out better ways to see when subgraphs that you're allocated to have upgraded, whether or not you even need to keep some of those older subgraphs, and making sure that you're not just filling up your storage with subgraphs that from old versions. I can share. We started to just write some Postgres queries to identify deployments that are no longer the current version of a subgraph. Specifically looking for that would be your n-1 scenario, and different things like that. But I'm curious what other people are doing to do their cleaning up phase.
Amazing. I see a few people typing. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Derek, if you were gonna chime back in.
Yeah, I just saw your message. Let me just find the query. Happy to share what we're doing.
Amazing. That's hilarious, Vince. Hashtag do my job for me so I can go outside and touch grass. While Derek is getting that up, anyone have any particular thoughts and stuff they want to share on how they're handling this? See if you people type. All right. How, if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, says is doing it manually still, and relying a lot on the Explorer and Telegram. Do you want to elaborate a bit more on how that's going and any challenges maybe you're facing in doing that, if at all? Yeah, I figured it would be quite time consuming. Sweet, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Derek. Do you want to maybe talk a bit about this?
Yeah, obviously you'll need to change your SGD number and then also your index or address. But this just looks for open allocations to or active allocations where it's opened on a deployment that is not a current version of any subgraph. Because you can have scenarios where you have two different subgraphs that point to the same deployment, and then if one of them gets updated, it's technically the n-1 for one of the subgraphs, but it's still version n on a different subgraph. And so it's just looking where it's not the current version on any subgraph, right? And so it must be an n-1 or worse. And so we'll run this query just periodically and look for, potentially old subgraphs or something like that. And this was just something we kind of tossed together in a couple of minutes just to at least have some type of a tracking system. But yeah, I was curious to see how other people might be tracking this type of stuff.
Amazing. Yeah. Folks, feel free to chime in, but just very quickly before you do, appreciate you sharing the alpha, Derek. Yeah, it's always good to have you in the call because you have a lot of alpha to share, so I really do appreciate that. Seems like Hal is taking on that alpha and gonna try it out as well, which is pretty cool. Any thoughts, folks, on this? Very keen to hear if you're also facing this challenge, and maybe if you have any ways of navigating that you could share, that would be really cool. I see Vince is typing. Seems like there's some action happening in the chat, so I'll let that go.
Yeah, on the QS subgraph, Vince is asking what we are using to view it. Personally, I only use a Graph-ANALyzer dashboard with a few GraphQL queries, but I find this very suboptimal because it's very hard to join the data with other subgraphs. So I think the better solution is probably either scripting it, or I think like Derek is doing, running SQL queries directly into the in Postgres on the subgraph. That's probably a more sensible option.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing, Marc-Andre. Always good to have that contribution there. And yeah, share the alpha. Seems like there's another question here from Josh.
Yeah, just curious if anyone else is checking if subgraphs are getting 0x0 POIs on them before allocating to the first time as like a signal that either too long to sync or they fail or whatever it may be.
We mostly check entity counts because we've had scenarios where we've had to 0x0 subgraphs that aren't necessarily long to sync, but we had like node issues on specific chains or various things like that. And so I would say that entity counts is probably going to be a closer metric to be able to see how long something's going to take. But I mean, both datums could be cross-referenced.
I'm loving the chat right now. It's funny. While folks are in the chat, I want to circle back to something that Marc-Andre mentioned, but handling 100 subgraphs and how that's one thing, and 400 subgraphs is painful, and needing to be able to support almost 4,000 soon. So I guess that's when asked the question what the main pain point is last week from Packer, that was one of your responses. What are you doing to kind of scale up your operations? And maybe if you want to share a bit of alpha there. I mean, you already alluded to improving monitoring and investing in dashboards as a little alpha hack. But if there's anything else you want to share, feel free to as well.
Well, I think specifically only to mention that currently my workflow, I'm still doing a lot of manual checks and operations on every single subgraph, both for allocation and on allocation. Still working, but yeah, if we're going to 10x the number of subgraph again or 100x, I'll have to revamp my whole workflow to basically automate everything and only act on exceptions. So maybe handling the 1% of subgraphs that will require manual intervention and automate the other 99%. I'm very, very far from that point, but yeah, just we need to massively automate everything.
Yeah,
we're
it's going to be.
we're also at the point,
sorry.
Abel. Sorry, you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Thanks. We're also at the point where, if an indexer has been running with sort of monolithic infrastructure up until this point, and my graph stack is certainly monolithic right now. It's all on one very big, very powerful, very fast server. But you're really at the point now where, I'm just I'm off-chain syncing as much as I can within my own sort of filter of what I think is worth syncing, but I'm really pushing the boat out now in terms of what that, one server can do, even with, the fastest storage you can buy, nice enterprise CPUs, and an absolute shed ton of memory. So, I've been avoiding it for a long time, but it's now, anyone else who's in the similar situation, where you've gone from syncing 100 subgraphs to 500 subgraphs or whatever. I'm somewhere in the middle there, maybe 400 subgraphs, something like that. The cracks are really starting to show, and I mean like the cracks on the server itself. So if you're using anything virtualized, then you're starting to see CPU weight go through the roof, which causes all kinds of havoc with multiple things running on the same server. So anyone who's thinking about making the next leap and you're still running on a monolithic stack, don't waste any more time on it, because as soon as you start moving into those multiple hundreds, you need to split the stack up and start moving to smaller, whatever your choice is, whatever your weapon is, Docker, bare metal, cubes, whatever, Linux containers. You need to modularize it, because really you're at the point now where anything beyond 500 subgraphs, you're just not going to be able to serve. Your QoS will be terrible. The quality of the responses you're giving will be bad, and mine's pretty bad right now. I'm not ashamed to admit that. If you go and look on graphs here, you can look at everybody's performance in terms of latency, and yes, that number is very much about what the absolute worst performing queries that you're doing. Anyone who's on Uniswap v3 on, I think it's Arbitrum, I can't remember now exactly, will know, right? There's some really awfully kick-ass queries going on that subgraph, and they just destroy your performance as far as the gateway sees it, So now's the time. I am not a fan of Postgres personally, and when I say that, I mean I'm just not interested in databases that much. But really, we are now at the point where just a single monolithic database is reaching its limitation, and you need to be thinking about whatever the next step is for you, both the database and then the architecture of your actual workloads. So yeah, that's something that's on my mind a lot. That, and also, like Marc-Andre says, we're at the point now where when you want to go beyond into the 1,000 subgraphs arena, you can't be clicking, making individual actions, whether it's just clicking a button or going into the console and doing something. You need to work on exception now. You can't really afford to be spending all that time to, redo your allocations or whatever. We do need we need automation to make that happen. A lot of that, there are indexers out there that I talk to that are working on this in private and see it as alpha. There are others on here that I know see it as public goods, because at the end of the day, our job is to deliver the best service we possibly can to our customers. So, there'll be a bit of both, I think. There'll be things that people keep themselves. There'll be other tools where people share. But I think ultimately, if we're going to deliver a service that is supposed to be better than Web 2 in terms of, a service for our customers, our end customers, and the data that they want and the demands they have, we need a lot of these automation tools to be built in the open, and everybody it's all hands on deck, right? It's not just leave it with the core devs. Anybody who has an opinion on this needs to, you need to pitch in whatever way you can, whatever your skills are, to help. For me, my brain is full of ideas, right? So I can do a bit of engineering. I'm pretty dangerous at a terminal, but I can't write what Vince is writing, but I can certainly provide feedback. So everybody
really has skin in the game here, and everybody needs to pitch in, and whatever your skills might be to help build these tools, whether it's Vince with indexer tools or Matthew and the suggestions he's making there around substreams and Firehose. I think that's a linchpin really for that product, because if people start running that without good tooling, the quality of service will drop significantly from what's being provided by Pinax and Streaming Fast at the moment. So rambling on a bit there, but yeah, it's just some stuff that's been on my mind for the last week or so, Abel.
That's amazing, and completely agree there. As you can see from the positive sentiment in the chat, seems like other people do as well. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting next chapter. And yeah, I mean, this call is all about sharing the alpha. So I saw discussions on Launchpad. We are going to bring a Launchpad session to IOH potentially next week, depending on schedules. Maybe the week after. I need to check in with the team on that. But yeah, there'll be announcements coming out pretty soon on that. Yeah, automation, and yeah, I think maybe a session on Launchpad could be interesting. Yeah, definitely agree, Marc-Andre. Okay, let's see. I think for the most part, the stuff that we had left over from last week has been addressed. There's a couple of stickies here that we've kind of spoke about in today's conversation a little bit and a little bit last week as well. But if there's any last thing that people want to kind of chime in on in terms of the biggest pain points or alpha that they want to share with the group in terms of open discussion, let's hop in and discuss that now before we wrap. Slim Chance. Slim Chance, let's see. So for Index is excited to build tools and improvements. Oh, cool. Amazing. Appreciate you sharing that. Slim Chance is just mentioning that for indexers who are interested in building tools and making improvements to the indexing space, Infidel will support with resources, bounties, and he's offering himself as someone you can DM to discuss that, which is amazing. Thanks for sharing, Slim Chance. Okay, all right. If there aren't any final thoughts, then thank you everyone for joining today's conversation. I'm glad we were able to follow on from last week's conversation, make sure that we continue the conversation. We'll be having some more Launchpad content coming up on IOH. We'll figure out dates and stuff like that and report back very soon. And yeah, looking forward to having more discussions and sharing more alpha with each other. And yeah, I will try and get core developers on as well to share more alpha as always. Cool. Thanks everyone. And we'll see you again same time next week. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.